libraries, dang, they can really make your day. So the very final chapter, the epilogue, is called Concerts. Anyway, I shouldn't have done that. Spoiler! Ah! A lot of people really love this book. I did not love this book. I found it utterly disturbing and scary. It's me, Jess. Welcome to another video. If you're a new subscriber, welcome to my channel. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in June. And I read so many good books in June, I don't even know where to start. And I also filmed a reading vlog where I talked about some of the books that I'm going to talk about in these two wrap-ups. By the way, I'm doing two wrap-ups, part one, part two. For those of you who are new to my channel, I'm a little rambly. I do ramble a little bit, and it's possible that this video would be really too long if I tried to talk about the 8 books that I read in the detail that I would like to. So I'm going to be presenting a part one of the wrap-up and a part two of the wrap-up. I've done this before. It works really nicely for me. And you get to see me twice talk about books that I read for the month. So I figure it works for you guys too. At least I hope so. Let's get into some of the books that I read. I read some fantastic books in the month of June. Truly astonishing books, really amazing books. I've been having such a good reading year. The books that I'm going to talk about today, so I mixed in the books that I read that have LGBTQ representation. I read 4 books really that had good LGBTQ representation. So I kind of mix them in with all the books because I actually think that it's good to read a diverse set of authors as often as possible, not just for a month that's dedicated to their recognition, although I do think that it's important to have that recognition. First book that I read that has this, that could have been qualified as having been read for Pride, Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. It was so strange to read this book while this submarine was disappeared. The billionaire submarine was disappeared off the coast of Newfoundland. And the whole time that they were searching for those people in that, whatever that was, balloon that they sent under into the deep sea, I was reading Our Wives Under the Sea and I was thinking about them and her and the whole, it all just was one of those serendipitous universe moments where everything was sort of blending together, and I was really having a hard time with the book because this is fiction, right? This is an idea that this is imaginary, and yet it was happening to these people. I found it very strange and quite disturbing. Like, the book is already disturbing, but this made it so much more disturbing, the fact that it was actually happening. Anyway, to get to the plot, I think most people know the plot of this book. It's the story of a couple. I mean, it starts out, the deep sea is a haunted house, a place in which things that ought not to exist move about in the darkness. I had so much claustrophobia reading this book. It was so intense. It was very claustrophobic and very strange. It's the story of Mary and Leah, a lesbian couple. And Leah is out at sea on a submarine, and the submarine loses contact with the world and sort of disappears. It was only supposed to have gone away for, I think, 3 weeks or 6 weeks, and she disappears. The submarine disappears and she's gone for 6 months. And the book opens actually where she's already returned, but she is going back in time to the time when she was on the submarine and they were not sure what their fate was going to be. It's kind of funny, like it's focused on their relationship and how changed Leah is when she comes back. And it's told from the perspective of, it goes back and forth from the perspective of Mary. It's a 2-person narrative. So Leah's perspective and Mary's perspective. And a lot of the sections that are narrated in Leah's voice are on the submarine while they're submerged, and what happened and how they reacted and responded to that situation, which was super claustrophobic, like I said. And then the perspective from Mary is told more in the present day when Leia is back, and really her experience, a little bit back and forth, like her experience with the initial disappearance of her wife, and then the experience that she's having with her wife returned, who is very different, who has changed in a dramatic way and has been severely affected by being on the submarine and being under the water for so long. It's interesting because Leia talks a lot about, there's also a lot of exploration of family history and relationships. Mary takes care of her mom, who is unwell, and Leia reflects back on her relationship with her dad, who was the motivation for her to get him. Well, her father was like a Marine. I don't know if he was a marine biologist or she's a marine. So Leia's a marine biologist, and I think she was very heavily influenced by her dad. She reflects back a lot on her. There are a lot of flashbacks to her relationship with her dad, and Mary has these sort of subplots or sub-stories, I guess, relationship with her mom, who she was taking care of when she wasn't well. Very strange, very surreal, and very, very, very disturbing. Very, very disturbing. Oh, I thought there was a really lovely passage in Our Wives Under the Sea about why love is so difficult to explain. There's a lot of exploration of why we love a person and what happens when that person changes, because Leia, when she comes back, is very changed. Sorry for the outside noise. I actually got a little mic. I bought a little mic, but I was a little like uncertain about using it today. I maybe use it in part 2. So check in with me for part 2 when I have my little mic and see if it makes any difference. I think I'm loud enough that I don't need a mic, but we're gonna try it anyway. There's too much outside noise, and I'm curious to see if I can improve the quality of the videos for you. I wouldn't say that I loved Our Wives Under the Sea the way a lot of people have raved about it and loved it. It didn't touch me in the same way, but it was definitely unique. It was definitely very original, and it was definitely very disturbing. Well, the next book that I read was Black Cake, which was a buddy read with Kellyanne, and it was so good. I really liked it. It had a few flaws. It suffered a little bit, and Kelly, I think, would agree, suffered a little bit from the too many plot points that need to be explained. It was too neatly explained in different parts. But anyway, let me explain the plot. So this is the story of Covey. Well, actually, it's the story of Benny and Byron, who are brother and sister. They are coming together after having been estranged. Benny had been estranged from the family, and they're coming together at the point of their mom's passing, and their mom's name was Covey, and they are learning about their mom's history, a lot of family secrets that they didn't know about, through a recording that she made before she died. And they're supposed to come together and meet with the state executor, a lawyer, and listen to this tape that their mom left them. And in the tape, she reveals a lot of surprising things about her past. This book is, in many ways, it's got a lot of different characters, and it feels a little bit sometimes like you're not sure how she's going to pull off the twists and turns of the story, but it's really, really well done. And I felt like every time we had a new twist, I didn't see it coming. And I was really happy with the twist for the most part. I mean, there were a couple of things that were a little too obvious, like I said, too neatly tied, like with a bow. There were a couple of things about the characters that were, I don't know, maybe not explored enough, or maybe exaggerated, but that was okay, because I really enjoyed the story, and I think that the story was really interesting because ultimately the story is about Covey's life on the island. I guess it would have been Jamaica. It just says escapes her island home, so I guess we don't know what island. So it's an unnamed, it's actually an unnamed Caribbean island, but I think it's based on Jamaica. And because the author is Jamaican. She's an American writer who's lived in Jamaica and is based in Italy. Charmaine Wilkerson. Anyway, the story is about Covey, and it's about her eventually, the way that she grew up on the island, and eventually leaving the island under duress, let's just say, and getting to England, and then how she manages to survive that experience. The things that I really, really liked about this book, aside from the plot and how well she managed the plot, I thought, were the characters, for sure. Benny is the daughter, and she's kind of an unlikable character throughout the book. She was an unlikable character for me throughout the book. There's this dynamic between Byron and Benny where he's the older, very responsible one, and she's the one who kind of flew the coop and, you know, is off. But she has her reasons. So she has reasons why she left the family, and there was a rift between her and her parents. And sadly, like, this book is also about missed chances to reconnect or to resolve issues, and that part of it I felt really sad about. There's some of that in the book. Anyway, so Benny's this kind of unlikable character, and Byron is the responsible one, and he carries quite a bit of resentment towards Benny for having sort of gone off and just not been in touch with him or the family, and not been in touch with their mom. And she has her reasons, like I said. I'm not sure if I agree with them, but she does. And then about them reconciling and her coming back, and through that coming back and listening to these tapes of her that her mother left, they learn so much about the parent, the mom, that is really surprising, but also makes sense at this time, under those circumstances, when a person was forced to leave their home and then had this whole other life. Like, their mom had this whole other life that the kids didn't know about. I do think ultimately it's a bit surprising and maybe not so believable, and I think Kelly, we talked about this, not so necessarily realistic, some things in the book, but had to be written in that way for the book to work and for the plot to work. This was an immensely enjoyable read. It was so, so good. So much of the story and the characters' lives revolve around water, being on the ocean, surfing. I think Byron he studies ocean floor, so I don't know what that's called. It's like an oceanographer or something. It was a really, really good read. I knew it was going to be good because it was highly recommended. It wasn't perfect, like I said, but it was a really good read, and I really liked the role the ocean played in the story, along with some of the characters. I really, really liked the protagonist, Covey, the female character, the mom in the story. And I had a lot of sympathy for Byron, and I had a lot of frustration with Benny, and so I was attached to the characters in the sense that I reacted to them. And there is a mystery in this story because somebody is murdered, and there is this question throughout the book of, part of it is the mystery of the mom's life and the revelations about the mom's life moving along. And the other part of the mystery is who murdered this person, who was responsible for that, and what's the answer to the murder question, the whodunit question. So it was very gripping, it was very engaging, and I really would recommend it. It was a great recommendation. Thank you so much to the booktubers who recommended this book, because I probably wouldn't have read it if I hadn't heard about it from, I think it was Scott. I know Scott highly recommended it. I think other people talked about it as well. I got most of my recommendations from Scott, and it was fun because I didn't even realize this, but Kelly and I decided to read this during the Caribbean Readathon in June. So that worked out tremendously well. So yeah, if you're looking for a fun summer, this is a great summer read too, I would say, because a lot of it is a lot around the ocean and water, and it gave me kind of summer vibes as well. So yeah, definitely recommend that. I read Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones for the college reading vlog that I filmed in June. That was a tremendous amount of work and a really fun experience, and I read 3 books. I'm going to talk about the other 2 books that I read in that reading vlog in part 2 of my June wrap-up. I talked a lot about mapping the interior in the reading vlog, so I encourage you to go and watch that if you want to hear about my reading experience reading this book. This book is fantastic. It's not very long. It's a novella, and it tells the story of Junior. Junior had lost his dad, and the story opens with him seeing his dad's ghost walk through his house at night. And that's the opening of the story. And then throughout the book, he continues to have visits with his dad. It explores really the relationship he had with his dad, the relationship that, or the circumstances that he has come up in. So it's a bit of, it has the elements of a coming of age story. And these encounters with the ghost of his dad they do evolve. There are, they kind of build and build and build towards the ultimate conclusion, which I'm not going to tell you about, but the book is written in a very kind of slipstream, like you don't know what's real, you don't know what's imagined, we don't know when he's dreaming, we don't know what's going on in his head or happening actually. So there's a little bit of confusion, I would admit, when I was reading the book. But the book also provides this really interesting commentary on intergenerational trauma and intergenerational oppression, and how Indigenous people have over generations and generations had to endure a certain kind of poverty, a certain kind of dissociation from their own culture, and a certain kind of treatment by society, by white people, by everyone in society as a kind of commercial phenomenon, which I thought was really interesting. There are he covers a lot of area in a very short space of time with this book about the experience of being a young Indigenous man without a dad. So I'm going to leave it at that. I really want you to go out, buy it, and read it, and tell me what you think of it. It's totally worth it. I've picked up a couple of more books by Stephen Graham Jones because I'm really interested in this author now, and he has an extensive list of books that I could read from. So I'm really excited to read more moving forward, and I can't encourage you enough to go out and pick up a copy of this book. Read it. I also read, by coincidence, I picked this book up at the library not knowing anything about it, and I literally picked it up because of its title, Francie's Got a Gun. And can I just say, I loved this book. This is such a great summer read. I read it so fast. It's very fast-paced. It's got an amazing title. The protagonist is a young girl named Francie. Francie's a wee girl. I don't know how old she is. She's in elementary school, and she has a baby brother, and she has a best friend named Alice. And her dad, the book starts out with Francie, I'm not ruining anything, the book starts out with Francie running down the middle of the road carrying a gun. And she's been instructed by her dad to run away with this gun. And so we don't know throughout the story why she has the gun, what happened to her dad, what all he is involved in, and that all gets revealed through the story. So we go back and forth from Gun Run, where Francie's running and trying to hide this gun for her dad, and the background to the story in terms of her mom. And so it goes back and forth between like chapters, titles, different titles, and the Gun Run chapter, which is the present day. Francie's trying to get rid of this gun for her dad. And she has so much chutzpah. Chutzpah is not the right word, but she's such a strong character. 10-year-old Francie. Francie's 10 years old, running away with this gun that her dad has instructed her to get rid of. And her regular life at school, where she's practicing as the soloist in the concert for the end of school concert, because the book takes place at the end of the school year in June. And the community in which she lives, and her mom, who doesn't really know what's going on but knows that it's a bad situation, and this rivalry between her dad and this other man named Mikey, who employed her dad at a construction site and is in love with her mother. So there's a bit of a love triangle with her dad and this man Mikey and her mom. It seems like that could be the source of this situation. We know from the beginning of the book that her dad is injured. We just don't know what happened and how he got injured. And it's a really interesting, innovative book. I haven't read something like this, definitely not in the recent past, that's structured this way. And I just thought it was really, really good. It took me by surprise. It's this tense and tragic story. The thing about the story that really got me is that all of the characters are written with a lot of sympathy and compassion. So even though bad things happen and bad choices are made, we know that each of the characters, we can feel for all of the characters in this story, even the really, really, really bad characters. And then just the slow reveal of going back and forth to this gun run of how Francie ended up with this gun and how her dad got into trouble is so well written. She withholds a lot of information throughout the telling of the book and reveals it very slowly and in a way that is just really compelling and gripping. And I thought it was very complex and super good. I just thought it was so good. And Francie herself is such a sweet, innocent young child, but at the same time, she has all of these instincts that like little kids have that make them so brilliant. Anyway, I could go on and on about this book. If you can get a copy of this book, I really recommend it, and I'm definitely going to be looking out for other books by Carrie Snyder. She's a Canadian writer that I had not heard of before, and this book was really, really good. So if you're interested in a book by a Canadian writer that's a new to you writer, maybe check out Francie's Got a Gun. I would recommend it, and I just came across it by chance at the library, and I'm so happy I did. Speaking of which, I also read When We Were Sisters by Fatimah Asghar for my book club, and I ended up getting it out of the library, and I'm thinking about buying it because I really love this book as well. I've really had a good reading month. It was so good. It won the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction this year, and I'm surprised that I'm not hearing more people talk about it on BookTube. I guess people are a little distracted by the Booker and other prizes. Just a reminder, I do have the Book Prize book tag, original tag that I made. If anybody out there wants to do it, it's still there. It's still, I think Jolene's the only person who's done it so far. Leave a link to the book tag, the original book tag that I made in the description box below if anybody wants to give it a go. When We Were Sisters is the story of 3 orphaned girls in America. Their father is killed. We know that their father was murdered, but I don't think we know who ultimately murders their dad. They end up going to live with their uncle, who has another family, and they're living in a house where he doesn't live with his family. I guess he rents out rooms in this place, and so he has them living there together. It's told from the point of view of the youngest of the 3 sisters, Kausar, and Kausar is, again, a very fierce young female character, and I just really, again, fell for her in a pretty significant way. I thought that her voice was so strong in this book. I know that people are talking about Demon Copperhead and Demon being such a wonderful character, but I think that Kausar also, as an orphan kid, is an amazing character, and I encourage everyone to pick up this book and read it because I think it's as worthwhile as Demon Copperhead. Perhaps maybe not as perfect, given that it might not have the same level of sophistication as Barbara Kingsolver, but this book is very, very, very good. So the 3 girls, Noreen, Kausar, and Aisha, are orphaned, and it's really about the way that they make their way in America as these orphaned young Islamic women. And Kausar herself is queer She's Islamic, so she's grappling with her own identity. She's grappling with her sexuality. It's a coming of age story for her. But centrally, it's about these girls who are orphaned, who are living with their uncle, who is, at best, we would say struggling. At worst, has some serious problems. And he, at very, very worst, might be considered a bad guy. So, but she's really coming to terms with her new orphan life, the loss of her dad, which is in parts very sad, and also the fact that she doesn't have a mother either. And she does recall memories of her mother, but we do have the impression that her mother, that she didn't really know her mother that well. She has memories of her mother, but wasn't with them long enough for her to really know her mother. So Uncle is really also interesting. Uncle his name is always blacked out. So I thought that was interesting and unique. I think the idea was to create like real anxiety around this character whose name we don't know, maybe even fear. We're supposed to fear this character, like we don't know his name, and it's blacked out. It's redacted. And there's this one section where there's a suggestion that Uncle was potentially abusive with the girls, and it's all redacted, which is, I thought, was really good. So there's an interview about Uncle, and it's all redacted. It's all in black. So we don't really know for sure if he's really bad. He's a great character. We don't know how bad he is. We presume he's bad, but then there are certain interactions between Kausar and her uncle which are really friendly. Like he takes her on a drive and his baby blue Cadillac. And, you know, there are these more heartwarming scenes between Kausar and her uncle. So there's ambiguity there. We don't really know. So it creates a real sense of anxiety, a real sense of fear throughout the book, because we don't really know what the uncle might potentially do with these young girls. And I think that she did that intentionally, because if you're orphaned and you're with someone that you don't know what's going to happen. And you don't know necessarily if you're safe, and you don't always feel safe. And the three girls do come together in a certain way. They rely on each other, but they're also really coming of age, and part of coming of age involves becoming independent as well. So Noreen, the oldest, is spreading her wings and becoming more independent, and Kausar, the youngest, the possibility that she might be finding herself in situations where she's on her own. In fact, there's one scene where one of the sisters is on her own and she gets hurt, and I won't tell you what happens, but it's just a demonstration of just how precarious their situation is in terms of their own security, and there's no supervision of them, and they really have to depend on each other to survive in this new world. And there's a very also strong sense of loneliness that I got from Kausar that kind of made it was really interesting to read about, because I don't think that I'm not sure that these feelings are always that well expressed when stories are told about orphans, and she just did a really good job of being able to capture the feelings of being orphaned in a pretty unique way. So yeah, I would say a strong sense of fear, in precarity, loneliness, and really longing for their lost father and their mom, who is really barely spoken of by anybody else in the family. It also talks about prejudice against people who, especially prejudice against people who don't have a traditional family unit. That structure in society is still so prevalent. Like I can say, even from my own experience as a single mom, it's so ingrained in the education system that you're supposed to have two parents, and that they were supposed to be cis, and you're supposed to have these family systems in place, and that for many, many people, these family systems just don't exist. So that idea of a nuclear family, and the idea that, of course, these girls don't have a nuclear family, but they're attending school and they're constantly confronted with people in nuclear families who consider themselves superior for being in these nuclear families. Really interesting, and just how we still in society are so strictly adhered to that idea. And I'm just going to read a passage that demonstrates that, and it demonstrates Kausar's longing for a nuclear family and her loneliness that results from not being part of a nuclear family. So Asghar writes, on Valentine's Day, we make cards for our parents at school. Even that's just so sad for an orphan. Can you imagine? No sensitivity whatsoever. I ask for 3 cards. I spread pink and white glitter across them, blowing and blowing, hoping that it stays put. This is Kausar's voice. There's a new girl in class, Victoria, who moved from Europe. She has big brown eyes and long black hair swept up neatly into a ponytail. She sits next to me and the teacher tells her to make a name tag so everyone can learn her name. Instead of reaching for the markers between us, she takes a clear plastic pouch from her backpack. It's filled with nail polishes. She gently swirls the nail polish brushes, curving out the letters of her name. She paints a mountain in the background, each grass blade its own stroke. My heart hammers. My bubble letter notebook, which made every kid think of me as an artist, is suddenly worthless. Inside my body, 1,000 pins descend. Around us, the other kids look over in wonder. Who taught you how to do that? I whisper. My mom, she says, looking up, smiling at me. She's a painter. She has a mother and nail polish. When I move, I feel the pins scraping against the inside of my skin. I could paint your nails, she says, her eyes focused on her name tag. That was really poignant, so I wanted to read it to you. But this idea that we're making cards for our parents, and we all have parents, and we all have moms. And so for someone who doesn't have a mom, that must be really hard. Why am I tearing up? What is wrong with me? Is it hormones? Ah! So yes. So I thought that was a good commentary. There's another really good passage about Aisha, and like Aisha struggles a bit with her identity. I could go on, but I will leave it there rather than read out a bunch of passages and just leave you with the idea, I hope, based on what I've said, that you should go out, maybe, that you could go out, not should, that you could go out, pick up this book, get it from your local library, read it, and possibly really discover something that you weren't expecting. I think it's fantastic, and it's definitely going to be up there for me in terms of best books I've read this year. So that's my wrap up. I don't have any bad books. I haven't read any bad books this month. No DNFs, no bad books. I'm on a really great reading streak. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you for part 2 of my June wrap up in a few days. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye! I am going to be doing my July, I'm going to be talking about, not July, June, my July, no, for part 2 of July, no, in part 2 of my notes. Just want to see my notes. No, I don't want to listen to it. I just want to see my notes. Maybe I don't get to see my notes now that it's archived. I guess I'm not going to read you anything from Our Wives in Privacy because I did not mark up my book.